I just want to share with you a lot of things that we have been involved with here over the years. And what I've been asked to talk about is improving meat quality, technical innovations, and adding value in beef processing. And more so than that is what opportunities we really have in front of us. And it's been quite interesting for me to sit here for the last day and a half and hear a lot of the issues that we're all facing with our cattle breeding and our purchasing of cattle and pricing and a number of issues that we all face. But I really accept in my heart that we're always going to have issues. And I really want to talk about how we overcome those issues as well. And what's really in front of us, what we can do about where we're at. Just to wind the clock back a bit to around 2017 when I was invited up here to participate in helping out. And I noticed a lot of changes taking place. And we had a lot of changes within the industry, and it affected our pricing structures, and it disrupted our businesses greatly, and how we overcome that. So I just want to simply focus on these four major pathways that we actually trade Vietnamese meat through, or meat processed here in Vietnam and also imported. So our first pathway is we have our traditional hot processed meat traded pre-rigor or pre-rigor mortis and direct to markets. And it's quite tender when it's cooked pre-rigor, and the only problem is there's no point of difference for Australian meat as to any other products or types of meat, whether it be bull, steer or cows from neighbouring countries. It's all processed and mainly sold on the saleable meat yield is the only price difference or that creates the profit. So I want to talk about the commercial aspects of where we're at and why we're doing it. And the second pathway is our traditional hot boning processed meat that we actually send to retail and food service. And that happens to be then post-rigor. So what actually takes place after post-rigor, we actually get this muscle contraction once we take the meat off the bone. There's nothing to support it. When it goes into rigor mortis, it contracts and creates the meat to be much more tougher. So when it comes into retailing outlets the following day, it then what we call full rigor, and it's not the same. And if you take a look at those two first photos, one at the top is when it's hot processed and traded straight to the traditional markets. And you can see in the second photo there where there's a strip loin and it's actually curling up, it's contracting that tight. Our third pathway is simply where we're chilling carcasses and we're processing them post-slaughter. And by doing that, we're actually allowing the rigor mortis to set with the muscles separated or not contracted, and then we process it, and that prevents that contraction and has a much higher eating quality, certainly affects it, improves it dramatically. And then we have our chilled carcasses, processed post-rigor, tender stretched, vacuumed, aged, as well as imported, chilled, aged products. So in cartons. So we've got a lot of competition now. We've got various ways of processing meat and different outcomes to consumers. And as Spencer just reminded us, is that the consumers today are different than what they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We've got a much younger generation coming through, and they are certainly seeking more. And from what I've seen, it's quite really interesting as how we need to move with that market. So if we're faced with higher prices, what are we going to do about it? We have the choices to move with it. Wow. That's a bit scary, isn't it? I hate to challenge you, but I'm going to challenge you because we do have to move with market trends. of what takes place. So with that, just to share with you is how do we move? What creates movement? We can talk to each other and we'll never believe each other because we don't trust, we don't know any better, so how are we going to change? So to implement change, we have to have a reason why. It has to be commercially viable. If we're not going to make money, why are we going to do it? And it's got to be able to create sales. So we did this particular exercise here, and it was a really interesting period of my life when we done this, because how was I going to do this? How can we do it? And so we started with what we currently do. On these tables here, we based it on the MSA eating quality scores on good, better and best. And where anything below a 46 there fails to an eating quality standard, and to right up to 100 in those three sections, good, better and best. Now, when we've done this tasting, I might add, through blind tasting panels, we got the consumers together and we got each person to taste the meat and rate it on tenderness, juiciness, flavour and overall liking. With the result of that, we put that data together and we came up with an average eating quality score for the products we tested. We started off with hot bone old bulls. And I know the bull's a great market here. It goes very, very well in our traditional markets. But when it comes to post-rigor, retail, let's have a look at it. So the results came out at very low results, around 25, failing terribly. So we still didn't believe that, of course. So we kept changing and altering and making different steps. So the red section where it all failed to a consumer satisfaction is all the hot boning pre-rigor. Post-rigor, we had a complete difference. And when we started processing steers, crossbred cattle with a little bit of fat, oh, scary, yeah. Cattle that we normally downgrade actually perform much better. So if we're thinking about our consumers and we're thinking about our business and what consumers are asking for, we take note that most people are prepared to pay a little bit more to get something they really enjoy. So it's making that point of difference. So that was the result, and that's what sort of, after a series of these tests, is making decisions whether we can actually, should we do it or shouldn't we do it? So we'd be very confident about what we're doing. So when we've done that and we converted, why am I going backwards? We don't go. I'm good at it. There we go. So when we put this into place and we started processing then as chilled, and then how do we know that we're still doing the right thing? So then we got the idea, well, why don't we start doing some more measurements and we'll compare that against what's happening in other supermarkets. So we got the data back. We've done the same process. We've got everybody involved within the company from the senior level right through, and we compared their product. And in this case, it was, if you don't mind me saying, it was Vision that we'd done this with. And we tasted their meat hot boned. Sorry, not their meat hot boned. We got it from the local supermarket. It came out to 31.71 fail. Post-rigor boning, 48. Good every day. And then, of course, when we aged it, we got up in the 63, quite high eating quality score. So that gave us confidence that in actual fact, we can do this. It does work. It will meet consumer satisfaction. Not that difficult, but yes, more difficult. And we also then compared that against some imported grain-fed beef, of course, was much higher. Aged, that was the ultimate. So we know we're not at that level yet, but we're certainly at a good everyday eating level score. So that confirmed to us that we actually had that right. And the company was then able to move forward into processing chilled beef every day, ever since. So with that, of course, we have a few problems and issues that also affect the eating quality that we may not notice, or we may notice. And one of those issues is our pH and pH declines. If we take note up in the right-hand corner, you'll often see in many supermarkets some dark meat, some bright red meat, and the cause of that. And that's simply because we have high pH levels from cattle that have been less energy. Okay. So they've burnt their energy levels up before slaughtering, and what the effect that actually has to us. So first of all, it has a dark meat colour. It'll be drier. It'll be tougher. Okay, not as enjoyable. So our idea is what we do is we've got to get our pH levels below 5.7, and we can do that, and we do that on a regular basis. But we also have other issues with curfews, and I remember as Greg Pankhurst said yesterday, in Indonesia, they don't have curfews. They sell up cattle live, full of food, every day. Where here we put them on curfew, we empty them out, we weigh them, and then we transport them and process them the following day. So we've got this period of time where they actually become energy depletion, and if we've got no energy, we don't get this conversion rate. And then we have this issue where we have this pH decline, where if the carcass gets too cold before the pH level falls, it becomes tougher. We can't see it. It's still the same colour. If the pH level drops too quickly before we get the temperature out, it also becomes tougher as well and doesn't age. So we have these two key issues, and in the diagram where we've got the yellow line and the blue line is where we tend to keep missing that eating quality requirement. We need to be able to get these into those requirements, and it would be very advisable if we could actually start thinking about other ways of payment rather than emptying the cattle before or these curfew times and transportation times. I know you won't like that, but it's certainly a positive factor to the eating quality. So if we start thinking about our consumers and we want to start thinking about making sure we get the right eating quality scores, we need to start thinking about where we're at there. We've done a lot of work pre-COVID. MLA's put a lot of investment in, a lot of support role in to work with processors to be able to build a vehicle that can make this supply chain happen. And they've done a great job where we've now got a multiple number of abattoirs that can actually process chilled meat and do it very, very well. We're also using those composite cattle, and we're making a point of difference as an eating quality score by doing that. So we're getting a full utilisation out of our types of cattle for each individual market. One of the key factors in amongst this was A, getting the pH levels right, B, being able to calculate it. Instead of selling our meat at one price, all in one, we actually can sell them individually as individual cuts, and that gives us the opportunity to manipulate sales. We can move with markets. We can compete with imported meats from various countries by being able to use that manipulation method. So there's been a lot of great work done there, and a lot of investment from local companies here to be able to do that, but it's certainly making a point of difference. Also through tender stretching, the implementation of tender stretching supports the eating quality factor, and we can raise between 6 and 8 points by tender stretching on the loin primals, which are the high-valued primals, and the leg cuts and butt cuts. Helps with that eating quality score. We've only got a tender stretch it during the rigor mortis process. The next morning, there's no problem, we can bone them. The carcass is set and we've stretched those fibres and the meat becomes much more tender. So it's a very helpful tool that we can utilise within Vietnam. With that, we want to move into adding value side of it. But first of all, there's a few key factors we need to think about. And number one, how do we maintain consistency? So consistency then now becomes extremely important. So we develop specification manuals, description manuals, how we describe it for our processing. So we continue to do the same thing day after day. And that in turn then helps us with our communication right through to when we're trading the meat or talking with our customers to buy that meat and why they should buy it and why it is different and what value should it be. So in doing that, it allows us also to develop different brands. So with the mixture of cattle that we have, we can package them on different eating quality scores, and we have different then values in pricing. So that gives us an opportunity to start drafting cattle in different ways. Which way gets the best premium? Which way gets the best customers? Which one will those customers buy? So when you go into supermarkets so that today, you'll see various brands, and they're going to have various different eating quality levels. We've been doing this with most things in our life every day. You go and buy apples, you go and buy wine, you go and buy beer. Everything is all priced independently different. So why isn't meat? I don't know. It's crazy, isn't it? We do it with almost everything. You hop on a plane, you go business class, you go first class, you go economy class. You pay for what you get. Why don't we do it with meat? Interesting. So by doing that, we can then start adding value and branding it differently with a point of difference on a good, better, and best principles. And if we can market accordingly, if we can tell the consumer, this one, it's okay. It's quite good value. Oh, this one's a little bit expensive, but it's something special. Or we've got this one that's really, really good. And that's our choice. We can have those choices to do that. But it all comes back to value for money to consumers. If it's value for money to the consumer, it's their choice whether they choose to buy that or not. And of course, in turn, we get premiums for our cattle. It's amazing how much I heard we're all growing cattle, we're feeding cattle, we've got high costs of feed, it's difficult, and we're not happy. We have to create what our consumers want. We've got to move our mindset away from what we've been traditionally doing and think about the consumer of what they want. And how do we do that? So I challenge you, okay? It's an open challenge. Please join me. Moving on from there, we've got the abattoir as the vehicle now. We can process it, we can do it, but now we also have to create the market. We have to create the demand. So through that, we create a demand. We create a demand to process the meat, where we can add value to primals by primaling, sub-primaling, take them into grilling methods, giving consumers more choice and keeping their price down, where we can buy grilling steaks. We taste it also in retail. We get the retailers to participate. They can relate the difference to the consumer. We calculate it. We have to do more calculations. We have to measure. We have to make sure that we know what we're doing to get those answers. We have to present it. And then we take it to market. We actually then present it to our consumers, where we create interest We cut it to cooking methods. Instead of putting a piece of meat for sale, where the consumers really don't know, they're taking a lucky dip, whether it's going to be tender or not for the cooking method. Cut it to the cooking method or label it to the cooking method so consumers know what they can do with that piece of meat. And then, of course, we make a wow factor in the supermarket with point of sale material. We identify where they can buy it. And then we actually do taste testing in store where consumers can actually taste that meat and understand what that difference is and why they should buy it. And with that, we've got some really, really marvellous outcomes by doing that. But we collectively need everybody to do that together. Not just one, but we all need to participate to make that happen. So the opportunities I see from that is feeding of cattle. We've spoken a lot about feeding of cattle. I understand the difficulties there. But I also see it as if we break our business into business units, that is another business unit that can be profitable as well. So we've had a lot of information given to us today and yesterday about how to do that. Give it a crack. Try it. Locally processing Australian origin cattle, right, as a competitive point of difference for Vietnamese consumers and traditional markets. There's a lot more things we can do with that to actually get that through that system. We can support that. And I'm sure we continue to grow in that area. Australian cattle, collectively creating products with a consumer-driven and demand in retail and food service as the valued point of difference. I challenge us to ask us, why is our meat going to be different? Why are we going to get more money for it? If we've got that point of difference, it'll happen. Australian cattle processes chilled beef or imported or chilled or frozen beef by collectively evaluating commercial outcomes through utilisation and secondary primals by cooking method. So let's bring it to the consumer so they know what meal they're making with that. Collectively delivering in-store products, sampling, point of sale material, promoting Australian origin, processed, chilled in Vietnam, and also imported. Wow. We're also competing with imported products. It's going to be the way of the future. How do we balance those? How do we all work in harmony together? We have to meet the same targets. I challenge you. Thank you very, very much.